Good morning, everybody. How are you? Happy Saturday. We made it to the weekend. Hope that you're doing well. Hope that you're looking forward to spending another hour with us talking about data science and everything related to the data world. Really glad that you're here. Really glad that we all get to come together as a global community of data science enthusiasts and keep on talking about the things that are going on out there in the world. So for those of you that are new, welcome. You're not alone. My channel is still consistently getting a lot of new viewers. So you're welcome to participate in what we refer to as our global roll call. That's where we ask people to introduce themselves, let us know your city, state, province, country, and it's a nice, easy way for you to participate. After that, I sometimes give an opening note, and then I also open up to questions where we can just talk about anything you guys want, anything that's on your mind. I also have an article that I have posted out on our Discord. If you want to kind of take a look at that, with an article that we can discuss, different elements in the article that kind of caught my eye and maybe make for some interesting discussion. We'll see. But otherwise, we're just here to spend time together, see what's on everybody's minds, what everybody's different questions people might have, so on and so forth. So really, it's just, I love the fact that you guys set the agenda. I never know what you guys are going to want to talk about. We never know who's going to show up. So we'll see. We'll see what kind of fun discussions we can get into. We've had some really good discussions recently. So really glad that, the format has led to that type of engagement. So I'm already seeing some names over in my chat. So thank you so much. Go ahead and keep on filling up my chat and we'll start going down the list and seeing who else is out there. So again, let us know your city, state, province, country, and we'll go from there. So as an opening note, I want to start thinking about kind of the close of the year and also looking forward into 2025. I know that I stressed earlier with you guys, and I still believe this, that just because it's December doesn't mean you can't accomplish goals, right? December is still 8% of the year, right? So it's still important to get out there and keep on working on your different things, right? Don't throw away December. But at the same time, I do kind of want to look ahead to 2025 because 2025 is coming up and sometimes it's healthy to set goals for yourself for the year. So I want to encourage you to think about what are the things that you want to get accomplished in 2025? What are some of the personal and professional goals that you want to do in 2025? Now, I believe that the goals should be, they should be stated, they should be achievable, they should be measurable, what you might know as SMART goal planning. So I want you to think about that, not just from a perspective of, some, for the lack of a better word, some fantasy goal that you want to do. I want you to think about it with your scientific mind. So the scientist says, well, okay, that's a goal, but how am I going to measure that? How am I going to get there? What are the progress points, the milestones along the way that I can use to measure myself? Right? Just like that saying goes, a goal without a plan is just a wish, right? So I want you to think about the goals that you want to do for 2025. But then I want you to think about, well, what are the steps I actually need to get there? What are the things that I need to do to measure that? What are the things that I could be doing right now, today, to help me get started on those goals? Just because they're 2025 goals doesn't mean you wait till January 1st to start, right? So keep that in mind too. What are some of the things you can do today? Do you want to improve something about your studies, about your health, about your body, about your relationships, with your family, with your friends, whatever the case may be? Start thinking about that because now is the time to plan. The more you plan for goals, the more achievable they will become, right? You can't just pick a goal willy-nilly, right? You got to have some forethought, some planning that you need to do ahead of time. Okay? So I want to encourage all of you to think about that because I want you guys to think about how the year is coming up. It's an opportunity for you to, come up with goals, but come up with goals that you're going to stick to, that you can measure, that you can hold yourself accountable to, right? and see where you end up with that. Okay. And hey, maybe some of you feel like sharing some of your goals for 2025. Feel free to put them in the chat if you'd like. It's up to you. I know goals can be personal. Or if you want to post them in the Discord, or if you want to message me directly, feel free to do that too. Okay. All right. So I'm seeing some names. Again, if you're joining us late, feel free to let us know your city, state, province, country, and then willing to help you after that. Okay. So is it Raj? I think Raj over on Instagram. Raj, thank you. I think it's your first time. Let us know your city, state, province, country. Okay, please. We always ask people to introduce themselves. Casual Economist. Wow, you are first today. It's been a while since you've been first, right? So good morning. How are you? Casual Economist also says happy Saturday. Happy Saturday to you too. It's been a while. How you been? Hope you're doing well out there. Let us know, okay? Let us know how you're doing. Landry, our good friend Landry from Belgium, watching from work. Uh-oh, don't get in trouble over there, Landry. Don't get in trouble. But yeah, Landry, welcome. Hope you're doing well out there. I think you're also a student, so hope your studies are going well. I'm not sure we know what kind of work you do, Landry. But hopefully, it's not too distracting for you to have us on. Sorry to hear you're working a Saturday too. Well, but I guess when you're a student, you have to do that, right? When I was a student, I worked weekends a lot. Osama, our good friend from Satat, says, "Hello, sir. I hope everything is going well. Everything is going very well. Thank you. I ran my stream yesterday, and then I. Do you guys ever have those inner battles to have to go out and exercise where you're like, oh man, I do it. I'm so tired. It's too cold outside. I had one of those days yesterday, but I managed to get out the door. I'm very proud of myself for doing that. I forced myself to go out. So I was very happy that I did that. But everything is going well, Osama. We're off to a good day today. I slept well. It's going to be a good day today. I'm going to go exercise later. So I think everything is going very well. Thanks. Yassine, our good friend Yassine says, "Hello, sir. Yassine from Tangier, Morocco." Yassine, good to hear from you. Hope you're doing well. Hope your studies are also going well. I know we have quite a few students, but hope you're doing well out there, Yassine. Dennelson from LA says, "Good morning, data practitioners. Happy Saturday." Oh, I like the way you put that. Data practitioners. I like that. I definitely think of myself as a data science practitioner more than a theorist, right? Don't be the theorist, guys. Although I do sometimes refer to my community as data science enthusiasts, right? That's another word we can use. But I like practitioners. So Dennelson, glad you're here. Hope you're doing well out there in LA. In what I think is a cold LA, right? Speaking of cold, Rex says, "Good morning from a cold NYC." Hey Rex, good morning. How are you? Hope you're doing well, my friend. Landry, let me come back to your question. Okay, let me get done with the introductions, but I see your question. So Raj on Instagram, thank you so much, Raj. Raj says, "I am from India, Bangalore." Nice, welcome, Raj. Glad to have you here. Hope you're doing well out there. Rex says, "My goal is to get Dennis to do a project series using Bayesian statistics and PyTorch in Colorado." Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. Thanks so much, Rex. I understand Colorado. I understand PyTorch. But Bayesian statistics? Do I have a manifesto against Bayesian statistics? I don't think I've done that. Have I? I'm okay with Bayesian statistics. But for those of you that don't know, Rex knows me very well. He knows that I'm not a fan of PyTorch and I'm not a fan of Colorado. Especially, well, I was going to say Colorado this time of year, but really any time of year. Ugh. That's hilarious. That's hilarious, Rex. I appreciate that. But I don't recall the Bayesian stats. Have I said something about it? I'm okay with Bayesian stats, So in some cases, I shouldn't say they've outlived their usefulness, but they're less used than they have been in the past. Leo says, "Good morning, everyone." Hey, Leo, how are you? Good to see you. Thank you for joining us from New York. Hope you're well, my friend. Casual Economist says, "My goals: hit the gym, take a class, and make Dennis's cabbage soup." Oh, that's wonderful. I like those set of goals. What class, Casual Economist? What kind of class are we talking about? Are we talking like a business course, a data science course? What are we talking about? Let me know there. So Landry, let me come back to Landry's question, but again, you're still welcome to introduce yourself. Let me know your city, state, province, country, okay? So Landry says, I have a quick question about the SOW and the project methodology. The timeline seemed like a waterfall approach. If we use a different approach like Kanban, do we let the client know that is our plan? Oof, excellent question, guys. Excellent question. So just to give everybody some background, Landry is referring to our series from Sunday. This Sunday series, we walk through creating a data science project from beginning to end, from the very beginning of getting a contract with the client to tomorrow. Tomorrow is our last session in this series, 11 parts, where we're going to talk about the final delivery in the articles. Okay. So one of those parts is that we do develop a statement of work, which is essentially a contract that you use in these consulting type of engagements, right? It's definitely part of the overall project methodology. And when you write those, you do lay out the different milestones that you see in the project, okay? And so Landry is saying that the last time we did this, we used a waterfall method, which is right. We used a waterfall method that says on this date we will do this, on this date we will reach this, and on this date we will reach this. That's classic waterfall. Kanban comes from the general agile planning approach. In some cases, the name Kanban comes because they used to be cards. They're called Kanban cards. And these cards kind of track the portions of your project, and you kind of move them along a timeline. Are they still in your to-do pile? Are they in your design pile? Are they in your work in progress? Is it in testing, and is it finished, right? It's kind of like this card that you progress along the stages of development, right? Or the general stages of development. Right? So Landry is asking a great question, because you could, if you wanted to, have like a Kanban approach to the SOW. So, Landry, let me get to more directly answering your question. Two things come to mind when I think about your question. Great question, by the way. Two things come to mind. One, realize that a project can have multiple timelines. A project can have multiple ways that you're tracking progress. Some of them don't even have to be known to the client. They can just be internal processing, right? There's many examples, but just as a quick example, you could say, well, I'm going to have a completely separate management process for my QA team, right? When my developers finish something, I usually have to send it to the QA team, which is usually a whole other team. So I'm going to create like a ticketing process to track that, so that I can always say, hey, QA team, I sent you something on Friday. You're supposed to give me an answer by Tuesday. What the heck, right? And you can track that. You can track that like via your own internal system, and that could be like a Kanban system, right? Or maybe just a traditional ticketing system like a Remedy or something like that, right? A lot of QA teams work on ticketing systems. That's common. So realize that you can have multiple items like that, okay? Related to that is that what you put in your SOW isn't necessarily what you're going to track for your team overall. The milestones that you may present in your SOW may not be what your internal team project plan reflects. We kind of did that, right? If you remember, we had milestones in the SOW and a general plan and a delivery date, but we had agile planning when we had our own discussions, right? We were doing our own discussions for agile planning. So, audience participation time. Why would you do that? Why would you have a set of milestones for your SOW and you have an internal plan for your own team? Why would you do that? Put that in the comments, guys. Give me some feedback. Why would you have that? Right? Let me know. And that answer, generally speaking, is related to the second item that I told you comes to mind, Landry. The problem with Kanban is that it tends to be a lot more open-ended than clients are going to be comfortable with. Because remember that a Kanban approach is more about the time that the card spends in each one of those stages. Okay, it's in my backlog. How long did it spend there? Okay, now it's in design. It should only be in design for a couple of days. And then now it's in work in progress. And that's going to be a 2-week effort, you know, and then it's going to be in so on and so on, right? So the challenge with Kanban is that it's too open-ended for both you and the client. Because think about, because I like the way you're thinking, Landry, about, hey, this is something I should disclose to the client, and you should. But what is the final delivery date that you would tell them? Like there would be none, right? And in my experience, that's not going to fly, right? Clients are very, very hesitant to sign something that doesn't have an end date like that, right? I mean, especially if it's your first time working with them and there's other competing bids. I mean, you're going to have a really hard time landing that contract if you say, hey, by the way, we also have to keep this open-ended. Going to be a hard sell, right? So that's another reason why you'd kind of want to avoid that. But again, you could use that internally if you feel comfortable with it, but it's not necessarily what has to go in the SOW. So again, guys, question for the chat. Why would you have a set of milestones in the SOW and then a different internal tracking system, whatever it is, whether it's Agile, Scrum, Kanban, Waterfall? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Landry, it sounds like you were putting a lot of thought into this, so feel free to give us your own answer on that too. But there's a reason for it, right? So again, Landry, what you put in the SOW doesn't necessarily have to be what you physically use on a day-to-day basis, right? So let me know, chat. What do you guys think? Why would you do that? Why would you have two things like that, right? And by the way, guys, overall, this is also where the project management becomes more art than science, right? Project managers aren't robots, at least they're not supposed to be. Some of them are, the terrible ones, right? But project management is definitely something that you kind of have to be creative with a little bit, right? There's always more than one answer to this, right? So let me know, guys. Why would your SOW track to some milestones? And internally, you could use the same milestones, nothing wrong with that. But internally, you may or may not use a different system. Why is that? Let me know. Let me know in the chat. What do you guys think? I'm going to give you the answer in a minute here. Yeah, I'm going to give you an answer in a minute. I'll give you guys a second to think about it. Joseph, good morning, Dennis and everyone. Hey, Joseph, how are you? Glad you're here, my friend. Hope you're doing well out there in Tennessee. Yassine, I see your question. I'm going to come back to when we finish the introductions and when we finish Landry's question. Leo says, Joseph, good to see you. Yeah, it is good to see you, Joseph. Hope you're well. Keep on coming back, Joseph. Voldemort, I don't think it's your first time, but remind us, let us know your city, state, province, country, okay? All right, I'm seeing a couple other questions. All right, so let's tie up Landry's question here. I'm not, okay, so Leo and Yassine are now offering answers. Thank you both. Leo says it's tricky. We need to consider what the project is about. Maybe. Yassine is approaching the answer. I think it might be negotiation. We try to give ourselves the best deal with the client. Yeah, Yassine is approaching the answer there, right? Why would you track to different milestones in your SOW versus your internal planning? The answer is pretty straightforward, after you know it. But I'm using this as an opportunity, a teachable moment. The answer is money, right? The answer is that you're still running a business, right? So most of the milestones that you're going to find in your SOW are going to also be tied to payments. That's usually the purpose of having those milestones in the SOW, right? Because at the end of the day, you're still a for-profit business. You still need to have cash flow considerations and, things along those lines, right? How much cash flow you need at the intervals that are in the milestones. Sometimes you also do it to keep the client engaged, right? The more a client is paying, the more attention they're going to pay to you, right? But that's the answer. The answer is money. You need to tie that back to the financial considerations that you as a data science team also have, right? So that's kind of where I'm going with that, where I'd like to see the SOW side to declare what we need for both the client's benefit and also to meet the overall financial picture of running a business, right? Now, to be clear, those milestones are important. It's a contract that you're establishing with the client, so you still have to meet those milestones, right? It's not to downplay that importance, but there is that element of running a business that comes into those milestones, and then how you track it internally with your team, with your QA, with your resource planning, all of that stuff. That can be a completely other system. That's totally okay, right? So Landry, great question. Thanks so much for that. Really appreciate it. Landry's answer was internally for flexible and externally for structure. Yeah, I'm on board with that, but I would just say externally for structure and finances, right? You gotta keep those financial considerations in mind at some point, right? But great question, Landry. You're coming in hot there, Landry. Just starting us right off with a good question. All right, so sticking with the questions, Yassine says, if you can provide some advice, please. I don't find myself as someone having specific goals. I just want to be a better data scientist and a better man in general. Is it a sign to start rethinking? Sorry for the off DS question. No, Yassine, don't apologize. We're all friends here. We can talk about whatever you guys want, right? Okay. So being a better data scientist and being a better man in general are two completely different things, right? So let's tackle those things separately. So here, this is where we can use a little bit of a trick that I've mentioned before, right? I've spoken to you guys before about root causes, right? What is the root cause of the problem that you're trying to solve? And one of the tricks is you got to ask why 4 times. You got to ask why 4 times to keep on peeling back the layers and figure out what you want to get to. Like what is it that you're actually trying to solve for, right? Because the surface isn't always the answer. It's usually deeper than that, right? And that's why you got to peel away those layers. So Yassine, I would ask you back, why do you think you need to improve as a better data scientist? Do you feel that there are portions in your knowledge or in your approach that are weak? Or are there portions that you're just more curious about? Right? Or are there portions that you simply just don't know? Like, you could say, hey, I don't know anything about neural networks. The reason I'm asking you that is because now you're starting to get to something that's a little bit more measurable, a little bit more achievable, right? Because if you can say, well, I don't know a lot about neural networks, well, then there's a study path for that, right? There's active steps you can do that. You're not going to get to that if you just say, well, I'm not so great at data science, right? Well, what part of data science do you want to help with, right? Or what part do you feel weakest in? It's possible that you would say, well, I don't feel weak in it. I just want to be more involved. Okay. Well, are there other tools you can learn? Are there languages you can learn? Like programming languages, right? Are there deeper experiments that you could be running with maybe some of your existing projects, right? So I want you to start asking like why you're having these types of feelings. Like, why is it that you'd want to improve? Well, I want to improve because I don't feel like I have a lot of deployed projects. Okay, well, why don't you have a lot of deployed projects? Well, because I'm not really good at front end. I'm not really good at HTML. Ah, okay. So now that becomes something that's measurable. So it's not improving your data science skills, it's improving your HTML skills or your UI skills or whatever, however you want to think about that. Now you're putting yourself on the path to say, okay, I need to know more about this, and I will do this, this, and this in January and February, and then in March and April, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and then in May, I'm going to revisit my goals because maybe now I know enough about HTML that I can look at this other thing in data science that I don't feel so great about, and so on, right? And then as a whole, for 2025, you become a better data scientist, right? So let me know. Give me some feedback there, Yassine. I think I'm on the right track there, but maybe you're seeing it a different way. All right. That was the first part. The second part was how to be a better man in general. That's a tough one. There's entire books written on this nowadays, right? So along the similar lines, right? And by the way, if you guys want to contribute to this, let me know in the chat. But it's hard to give you a single answer here, Yassine, because what is your definition of a better man? I think a lot of people have different definitions of that, right? Different regions, different cultures, different people around the world are going to give you different answers for that, right? I know that I have my definition, but that's necessarily everyone's, right? And yours might not be everyone's either. So I think that it would have to start with, well, how do I define being a better man? So for everybody else in the chat, if you feel like contributing to that, let me know. But you'd have to better clearly define that, right? What exactly makes a better man to you? And then repeat the same process. Well, what are the parts of me that feel like I'm not quite at the standard, at the level that I want to be? Do I need to lose weight? Do I need to have better relationships with people around me? Do I need to communicate more, right? Do I need to make more money? Whatever the case may be. So that one, I love that you're thinking about this. I think all of us should try to be better people, better men, better women. But what does it mean to you? Right? Because I know that all of us here are from specific countries, specific backgrounds, right? We're all going to have a different definition of that. But you'll never achieve anything if you don't take the time to define what it means for you. So what does that goal look like? What does that definition look like for you? But this is great, guys. I'm glad that this has started you guys thinking about this, about 2025, right? Like, it's good to have these conversations, and I want to commend Yassine for being so open about putting that question about being a better man, being a better data scientist. That's not easy to ask, right? But that's part of building a community here, right? We should be able to trust each other and be able to have those conversations with each other, right? So if you want to contribute, right? What is your definition of being a better man or being a better data scientist? It's up to you what you want to contribute to, right? But I'd encourage you to define that first, Yassine. Like, how do you see that? And then what are the steps you need to help with that? Do you need new friends? Do you need a mentor? Do you need other things, right? So Yassine says, yes, sir, this is exactly what I'm missing. I don't specify in advance what I'm missing. I'm going to start using that approach, identify the points that I need to improve first. Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah, or, are there, or you could definitely approach that. Also, another alternative is, are there things or people out there or relationships or whatever that you wanna imitate, that you wanna be like, right? You could also look at it that way, right? Maybe there's, in your location, in your background, there are male role models that you want to look up to, right? Or maybe there's just other basic things like, well, if I want to be a better person, I know I also need a better job. I need better employment. I need a little bit more education or whatever, right? Those are also things you could think about. What is the for the lack of a better word, I'll say image. What is the image of that better man that you're trying to chase or that you're trying to bring into your life, right? You'd have to make sure you have that ahead of time. So again, if anybody wants to participate, feel free to let us know in the chat, right? Like what you think is that better man, better data scientist, better woman. I mean, we might have some women in the chat today, right? But I think it's healthy for us to talk about these things. Really healthy. So Rex says, from the data science perspective, got to learn how to self-assess, come up with a plan on how to improve, then execute. This is an iterative process. Yeah, I like the way you put that, Rex. Absolutely. Rex, you're probably already including this in the self-assess. But, this is one of the things that I think, I've mentioned it on stream before, and I think is a really healthy benchmark for you to reach in your data science process. Data science development, I should say. And that is what I've told you guys before. Have an opinion. Have an opinion that says, hey, I looked at self-driving cars. This is the technology as I understand it. This is what I know with my studies, with my research, with my own self-assessment, and this is what I think. I think X. So Rex, I think you're already including that in the self-assessment, and I think that's super healthy. It's super healthy for you to be able to say, I'm a scientist, I have my own thoughts and opinions, I've done my own research, and here's what I think. Here's why I agree with this, or here's why I think this person is wrong. That's a very healthy process to go through. So Rex, I appreciate the way you put that. Okay, so Yassine says, for me, sir, a better man is a man that adds value for himself, for the business, his friends and family, a man that improves life for his environment and loved ones in general. Okay, cool. Okay, Yassine, so let's walk through this, right? So I told you have to ask why 4 times, or you have to ask the questions 4 times, right? You got to peel back the layers, right? So from your statement, what is value? Like, what is that value that you're providing? Because you mentioned for yourself, for your business, for your friends, for your family. Do those 4 groups have the same value or need the same value? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It depends on you, right? There's no wrong answers here, right? These are all whatever you think they are, right? But you'd have to further define that. So how do you see value there, Yassine? Some people, and again, I acknowledge that I'm sharing my bias. I understand that I have viewers all around the world, so this may not be your perspective. But some people would define value as being a provider, as being a protector, right? As being a mentor, right? Maybe that's part of it. I don't know. It depends on how you see it. I'm just sharing what I think. But is that the value you're looking to provide, or how do you define value? You'd have to kind of think about that, right? And then if you can define that, then what do you need individually to gain more of that value to give to others? Do you need more money? Do you need better health? Do you need more resources? You know, like a better car or a bigger house or whatever the case may be, right? So let me know if you feel like, and by the way, Yassine, if you feel like you don't want to share anymore, that's totally okay, right? I'm just asking the questions, and you know, I'm asking them to everybody in the chat, right? So let me know, guys. I know this might be a difficult topic for everyone to talk about, but you know, we keep the chat respectful here. So if you feel like sharing, what do you think makes a better data scientist or a better man? Rex says, yes, having opinions on DS topics is important. That's great advice. Thanks for a reminder. Yeah, Rex, you know, and I know you're a smart guy, so I'm pretty sure you already meant that in the self-assessment. But it's important, guys. It's important. It's important for you to kind of recognize that as a development in your like bigger life cycle as a data scientist, right? To look out and say, hey, wait a minute, you know, I just read this article and it has a sexy headline, but I also know this, and I learned about this, and I wrote some code for this, and I don't agree with what that article said, right? When you can get to that point, I think that's a huge, like that's a level up, right? When you can exercise your own thought and your own experience and say, wait a minute, I read that research paper, I read that article, I heard this interview, and I'm not on board with that. Or, hey, I agree with that, and I agree with that because I did this, and I see, and I know what they're talking about when they talk about this. Oh, right? Super, super important milestone in your overall development. So definitely keep an eye out for that, guys. That's definitely something like one of those like aha moments, right? Where like you really feel like you've grown into a data scientist, right? So definitely something for all of you to keep in mind. So if you're just joining us late, feel free to introduce yourself. Let us know your city, state, province, country. We always ask that so people can keep the chat positive and professional. And on top of that, the current question in front of the chat is, how do you define being a better data scientist or being a better man, a better person, or a better woman? This is all stemming from my initial opening note about thinking ahead to 2025. You know, we're in the middle of December now. There's just a couple of weeks left in 2024. So don't throw away 2024. There's still plenty of things to do. But let's look ahead to the goals that we want to have in 2025. What do you want to accomplish? More importantly, what are you going to do? What are the positive steps that you're going to take towards those goals, right? Feel free to share if you'd like on any of your perspective on that. But it's healthy for us to talk about these, and it's also healthy for you to talk about your goals in public, right? The accountability of goals is very important. So talk these out. You know, don't be afraid to state your goals. It's healthy for all of us to do that, right? Joseph says, hey, Leo, nice to see you too. Just saw your message. It is always nice to see Leo. Leo's a great guy, and I appreciate Leo, Joseph, and Rex for being such great moderators. So Denelson says, Denelson, thanks for sharing, by the way. In my case, I believe being a better man is to be a provider for his family. I'm barely keeping my head above water, and I can't help my family enough to keep them and myself afloat. I want to change that. Okay, Denelson, thanks for the honesty. Really appreciate that, friend. Yeah, you know, that's something that I think a lot of us are concerned about, right? How do you make yourself into a good provider, right? That's not easy, because being a good provider that's not a theoretical exercise, right? Like you're either doing it or you're not. And there's some very very quantifiable values you can put towards that, right? So I also appreciate Denelson saying, well, hey, look, if I can't provide for myself, then I'm in no position to provide for others, right? This is probably not the best time for me to be providing for others. And I think that's true, right? Not everyone sees it that way, right? You know, mistakes are definitely made there. But I can appreciate that Denelson is taking that internal view to say, well, wait a minute, I got to take care of myself first, you know, kind of build myself up, build up my savings, my things around me, you know, like having a car, having, you know, a stable housing situation, you know, whatever the case may be, right? Before I can say, hey, I'm ready to be a provider for others, right? So really appreciate that perspective, Denelson. And I think you're going to get some people agreeing with you, right? Other people in the chat, I mean, because I think it's a natural feeling for a man to want to be a provider. But thanks for sharing that, Denelson. And if that brought up any other thoughts, let me know, okay? Leo says, thank you. We are indeed great moderators. And so modest, too. Leo, don't forget how modest you are, okay? You should tell everyone how modest you are. Tunga, nice to see you. Tunga, remind me your city. Was it London? I think you were in London. Let me know, Tunga. So Landry says, I used to think being able to make it through a data science project without using Gen AI would make me a better data scientist. Oh my God, that's hilarious, Landry, especially since you of all people know that we use Gen AI exclusively, right? That's hilarious. I can kind of see your goal, right? Like if you can say, oh, I don't need Gen AI, I write code on my own. Yeah. You know, that is kind of a badge of honor in some ways, right? That is kind of a little bit of a badge of honor. But yeah, but that's funny, Landry. I love that different take on yours. So hey, Sam on Instagram, I see you over there. We ask people to introduce themselves. Let us know your city, state, province, country. Okay, please? All right, so Yassine says, value to me is improving in general. For the different aspects, for example, family and friends, you provide safety and wisdom so that they can have a better life mentally and physically. Okay. But what is wisdom? Right? And I'm asking that a little bit rhetorically, but at the same time, there are some serious elements to that. Like different people need different types of guidance. It's very hard to be that to everyone, right? And then the second thing is, are the people around you open to wisdom, right? Have you put yourself in a position where they would accept that wisdom from you? So just in the same way that we were talking about being a provider earlier, right? If you can't provide for yourself, then how are other people going to trust you to provide for them? If you can't display wisdom on your own, then other people around you may not want to accept your wisdom, right? Subconsciously, they might think, well, why should I listen to you? Right? So let me know, Yassine, but what is wisdom? And are the people around you able to view you in that way, right? I hate the term, right? But but in business and on LinkedIn, you always hear about people being thought leaders. I'm not unemployed, I'm a thought leader. Right? I mean, that's like the thing, right? So like, have you built up those credentials, those social credentials, where people are going to accept wisdom from you, right? That's a tough question. How do you measure that? You kind of can't, right? So let me know, Yassine, or anybody else who feels like commenting on that. I'm not unemployed and hard to work with. I'm a thought leader. Denelson says, as a data scientist, I want to be able to work through the methodology we've seen in the series and in your book, so I can discuss it as a professional to others for potential employers and teams. Nice. Nice. I like that, Denelson. I like that. I like that because you're talking about being that data scientist at that meta level, right? You're able to see the bigger picture, right? And here's why I like that specifically, Denelson, because to me, that's also what puts you on the path to being in management or being like a team leader or like a senior data scientist, right? Because if you don't understand that methodology, if you can't see the bigger picture of a project, of your approach, you can still have data science skills, but you're just the worker bee, right? And that's okay, right? You know, we need worker bees, right? But the way you're talking here, you're talking about someone who I would consider for like a lead role or the senior role, right? This isn't a data scientist 1 role. This is at least like a level 2 or 3 type of thing, right? So I think you're on the right track with that, Denelson, especially if you want to be in management, right? So I don't know if that's what you intend, but I do like that about your statement, that meta view is what separates you, somebody who can have management potential versus the worker bees. Nothing wrong with being a worker bee, right? You kind of need that your first couple of years, you know, maybe fresh out of school or whatever. But that's kind of where that clear separation is, right? Does the person see the bigger picture? So good for you for doing that. So Yassine says, but to be able to do that, you have to become sharper and go through many experiences and learn from many mistakes. Yeah, I agree, Yassine. I agree. So that raises the question. Maybe this isn't a 2025 goal. Maybe it's a 2026 goal, right? And that's okay. But then it's healthy for you to define what are the things I can do in 2025 to help me along, right? So if just because it's a 2026 goal, I'm not saying put it off. I'm just saying that there's other steps that you need to take before that to get you ready for that, right? You need to take steps 1 and 2 to get you ready for steps 3 and 4 so that you can reach the goal of step 5, right? So you can think about it that way. Or you can think of it in other ways, like, okay, so maybe I'm not the best provider of wisdom, but what are the other things that I can provide? Right? Like maybe you just need to like shift your focus on what you want, on what that value is, what that definition of value is to the people around you, right? To the 4 groups that you mentioned earlier, right? And by the way, guys, so remember that the first group I mentioned was yourself, providing value for yourself, right? And realize that that's going to change over time, right? It's not always like a static thing. So for example, I had this discussion with a coaching client of mine recently. And by the way, you know, I do offer coaching lessons. If you want to get more of this type of discussion, you know, you can book me for a one-on-one coaching session. I had this discussion with a coaching client about when you get older, you know, somebody like me, you need like a team around you, right? Like for me, you know, I know what I need to help me, right? So I have a primary doctor. I have a cardiologist that I go because when you're older, you know, everybody needs a good heart doctor when you're older, right? I have a massage therapist that I like. You know, there's a spa here at a hotel that I like, and I go see him. And, you know, we've been working together a while, and he's a great massage therapist. And then I also have a coach that helps me with my keto diet and like my workouts and things like that, right? So maybe that's the value you need to provide to yourself too. Now, I'm not saying that you need all these things. You know, I'm just giving you an example at my age where, you know, I have that team around me to help me. But that's me defining value for myself at my stage in my life, right? But sometimes that value comes from those external sources or other things that you need to do for yourself to help you. What are those things for you? Only you can define that, right? Oh, I also have a good veterinarian for my dog. That's important because I love my dog, so he needs care also. So I have a good doctor for him. But what are those things around you that help you, right? All right, so Leo says, guys, nothing lasts forever. Today we might not be in the best moment in our lives, but don't be attached to it. Take some time to think about your progress, personal growth, increased knowledge. Yeah, great advice, Leo. I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah, it's not static, right? What you need in different points of your life is not static. It's going to change. It's going to change. So Tunga says, thanks for sticking out, hanging out with us, Tunga. I appreciate you. I see being a great data scientist as being someone that prioritizes ethical practice and in constant assessment of one's contribution to society. Awesome. Yeah, great. Tunga, I know you didn't intend it this way, but you could also use this as a definition for a man, right? Because remember, guys, for those of you joining us late in the chat, we're talking about what makes a better data scientist, or if you want to talk about being a better man, a better person, a better woman. Tunga, your statements kind of apply to both, right? Being ethical is something that's important in anything you do, right? And quite frankly, it's not common, right? I mean, I've lived long enough where I've seen some fairly unethical things, but it happens, right? That's just the world we live in, right? And constant assessment of one's contribution to society. Yeah, I like that. I like that. So I'm not disagreeing with you, Tunga, but one of the but I like your concept of constant assessment. But I don't think of it as contributions to society. I think about it more about my own thoughts, right? Because we talk about bias a lot. We talk about data. I always say that, the easiest definition of data science is removal of bias from your decisions and from your data, right? That's what data science aims to do. You can't do that unless you, as an individual, are also questioning your own biases, right? Like I talked earlier this week about that. You guys know how I feel about automated vehicles. I'm not on board with them. But I wouldn't be much of a data scientist if I wasn't willing to say, well, wait a minute. Let me look at the latest developments. Let me look at the latest sensors and the latest papers. Maybe it's improved, right? You have to question your own biases, right? That constant assessment that you're talking about, Tunga. You're not much of a data scientist if you can't question yourself, right? I had this conversation with one of my moderators recently about how I'm always worried when I see data scientists who make these very direct, very assertive statements, right? This is the way we do. You can't say that, right? You can give your opinion on how to do things and how you see things, but that's only you at that moment in time. You should be willing to readjust, right? You have to adjust when new information enters the arena, right? So I love your mention of the constant assessment, Tunga, but I would also add that, right? That it's about yourself too, and your own approach and bias and all that stuff. Casual Economist says, I'll let my woman provide, I'll be a house husband. Okay, good for you. That's not an uncommon situation now, right? In some parts of the world, that's not uncommon. In other parts of the world, it might be rare, but in some parts of the world, that's an increasing trend. So good for you, Casual Economist. Leo says, a bad day lasts as long as a good day. It will pass. You're all great people and only good things happen to good people. I appreciate that, Leo. Look at Leo being so uplifting. Thanks for that, Leo. I appreciate that. Sam, over on Instagram, let us know your city, state, province, country, okay? So Landry says, to Yassine's point, can we simulate those situations where we make those mistakes so the mistakes have a lesser impact on our career? can we simulate those situations where we make those mistakes so the mistakes have a lesser impact on our career? That's a really good question, guys. I don't know how I feel about that. If you guys want to, give me feedback on that, let me know. Here's what I can't get over, Landry. I myself, and I definitely don't want this for any of you, I don't want to live in a world where I'm afraid to make a mistake. Like you don't, I never, and I don't want you guys to ever feel like I gotta be mistake free to be a good data scientist. I don't think that's healthy, and I don't think it's realistic, right? So I really don't want anybody to kind of walk away with that feeling, right? This is where I think emotional intelligence and your communication skills come into effect, right? I once heard an interview where they were talking about how if a team makes a mistake and you want to have a discussion on the mistake, the discussion is about how can we prevent this in the future, not who's to blame, right? Because one of those is backwards looking, one of those is forward looking. So a good leader is always going to want to be forward looking and say, well, hey, it happened. How can we prevent this again? Right? So Landry, I would want to encourage you and everybody else to think about this in terms of, well, I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm going to handle it in the best way possible. If I make a mistake, okay, I'm willing to accept responsibility. And then I also want to develop the communication skills to be able to say, hey, here's the mistake. Here's why it happened. Here's how we're not going to have it happen again, or lower the probability of it happening again. And from a practical perspective, that's kind of what you want to do, right? Because you can't practice for every mistake that could potentially arise in a project, right? Like that's not realistic either, right? So let me know what you think about that, Landry, and also Yassine. But I don't want you guys to feel like I gotta have perfection to be good. You know, it's my first job. I can't make a mistake. Don't do that. Right? And also, if you remember, from our conversations with the interview series I did in August, particularly with my friend Laura Sell, we talked about that, about how if it's your first year, your first job, or you move to a new company, maybe you're mid-career but you move to a new company, the people around you want you to ask questions. Like, you shouldn't feel like, oh, I can't ask questions, or I got to be perfect, I don't want to look dumb or something. They want you to ask questions, right? The smart person asks questions and says, hey, can you help guide me through this, right? That's the emotionally intelligent way to go about it, right? So let me know what you think about that, Landry, because I don't live my life that way, and I definitely don't wish that for any of you. You're going to make mistakes. It's how you react to the mistakes that's important. The maturity and the leadership that you show when those mistakes happen, that is important. So think about that, okay? Leo says, what if we also remove the bias generated by our own thoughts? Yes, this is what I do bad, but what I do. Yes, this is what I do bad, but what I do right. You're not your thoughts, especially those arising from fear. Yeah, I like that, Leo. I like that. I like that a lot. It takes a lot of self-awareness to recognize those thoughts, right? And to recognize that, hey, wait a minute. Is that actually what I think, or is that a fear? Right? And if it is a fear, well, fear is a natural human emotion, but is it a rational fear, right? So I like that, Leo. I like the way you put that. Thanks for that. Denelson says, love you, Leo. Best hype man. Yeah, Leo's doing a great job of being a hype man today, huh? Yassine says, I think the best way to kind of simulate is to actually learn from others' mistakes. Yeah, Yassine, that's fine. Definitely learn, take the lessons learned, but don't take that as a way um, to mitigate you making your own mistakes, right? Like, take the time to learn, take the time to ask people to help you teach you things, or, new processes or whatever. But don't take it as, well, I'm trying to learn every mistake possible so that I don't make them myself, right? Because that just leads to anxiety and just a bunch of negative things, right? I would much more encourage you to learn how to handle those mistakes, how to show that maturity, to say, hey, you know what? This mistake was on me. I know what I did wrong. Here's how I'm going to fix it. And we can all move forward like that, right? So think about that. Joseph says, that's really great advice. Being free to make mistakes allow us to grow. Yeah, I think so, Joseph. And also, like I told you guys, to me, this is the mark of a good leader, right? I'm not saying you should do this, but if you want to kind of like grade your leadership, or find out where your leadership really stands, make a mistake. See their reaction in a mistake, right? Don't do it on purpose, obviously, right? But if you want to measure, find a good gauge to measure a leader by, see how they handle themselves when a mistake has happened, if something has gone wrong. Do they start blaming people and throwing people under the bus, or do they kind of take charge of the situation and say, okay, look, let's get to a stable state, and then we'll talk about what happened and how we can prevent it in the future. Like, that's leadership, right? Fazleen, I think it's Fazleen over on Instagram. Let us know your city, state, province, country. We always ask people to introduce themselves, okay? Hyprix on Instagram, same for you. If you could please introduce yourself, I appreciate it. Keeps the chat professional. We keep a professional attitude here, guys. Leo says, to Landry's point, why do you think you can't make any mistakes? For me, it's a form of bias. I can't make any mistakes because bad things happen. Well, bad things are going to happen even when we're dead. Yeah, you're right about that, Leo. So, Leo, I love that you're posing these questions. So, Landry, if you feel comfortable answering that, or anybody else in the chat, maybe give Leo some answers there. Leo says that's not a good burden to carry on. Yeah, absolutely, right? A terrible way to live, guys, right? That's going to lead to anxiety, to fear, and then in turn, that's going to affect your own performance, right? Maybe you could have performed at 100%, but now you're only at 80%, and now you're not showing the best side of yourself. So now you're kind of, as my friend used to say, you're hustling in reverse, right? If you're so afraid of being good that you're no good, then what are you doing, right? What are you doing to yourself, right? Joseph says, Mastery by Robert Greene talks about making mistakes. Yeah, Joseph, you're right. So if you want to kind of give your view on that, let us know, Joseph. But yes, as Joseph reminds me, Mastery by Robert Greene is a book that I recommend to a lot of people. It had a huge impact on my life. So if you guys want to, find some guidance, in various stages of your life, I definitely encourage that. Mastery by Robert Greene. Yassine says, yes, sir. Thank you very much for the advice, for the guidance. I hope it helps, Yassine. And if anything's not clear, let me know. Go ahead and put it in the chat. Yeah. So listen, guys, I'm going to share something with you here, and it's really something I haven't shared with a lot of people. I think I shared it with Leo, but that's about it. But I'm really enjoying today's conversation a lot. And I'll tell you why. As you guys know, I always think about things in the meta perspective, right? I always tell you guys, what is the meta game that you're playing, right? Because if you're not playing a meta game, then you're losing, right? So obviously for me, this channel is a lot about data science and, talking about, my work experience and things like that, right? But I'm also somebody who reads a lot. I like keeping up with current events and, looking at different things that are happening in our world. And I increasingly think about my legacy and about, what am I doing for the future of the world, right? Because I will be dead and gone and the world will live on without me, right? So what am I doing to help? So yes, my channel is about data science and all that, but I'm also concerned with the guidance that we are giving to our young people, particularly young men. There's in many parts of the world, but certainly here in the US, there's a lot of unemployment, there's a lot of drug use, there's a lot of video games, there's a lot of nonsense basically, happening with our young men in particular, right? So I do data science, but part of the metagame here is that I also want to help that greater cause, right? Because I can choose to be the old man and, wave my fist at the clouds and all that, right? But what are you, Dennis, going to do about this, right? So I really appreciate this conversation because it kind of helps meet that goal, right? That I'm trying to think about ways that I can help the next generation. So anyways, I'll leave it at that. But I'm really enjoying the conversation because of that, because that's kind of like the metagame for me here, right? Like, what am I going to do to help? I'm not just going to sit around. What am I going to do to help? So, data science is great. Obviously, I love it. But it can also be a vehicle for bigger things, right? So, anyways, I'll stop there because I haven't really shared that before. But I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate that Yassine brought up these questions and all of the feedback you guys are giving. So, thanks a lot for that, guys. Really appreciate the conversation. Anytime you guys want to talk about this, I'm here for it. Okay? So, having said that, thank you so much. It's been a great discussion. Really appreciate that. Yassine says, thank you very much, sir, for everything. You're a really good man at my perspective, and I aspire to be like you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Yassine. Thank you for that. So tomorrow, 1500 GMT, we're going to finish out our series on data science project from beginning to end. But again, thank you so much for the great discussion today. We can pick up this discussion anytime you guys want. I'm here for it. Or if I can help you, just let me know. But until then, please take care of yourselves. Lots of craziness happening, especially if you're in New Jersey. So take care of yourselves, take care of your families, and I'll see you next time.